The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelist, Gabriel D. Vine from Future Rant.
Thank you for having me, and good day to you, Bitcoin and posterity.
Josh Skigala from Vaultoro.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Thomas and Gabriel.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, Starbucks and Bitcoin. Intercontinental Exchange, aka ICE, the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange, is wading into the waters of cryptocurrency this week, announcing Bakkt, a Bitcoin custodian and exchange, as well as partnerships with Microsoft and Starbucks. But it was the latter that made the news, as the idea of buying coffee directly with Bitcoin at Starbucks endlessly fascinates the media, while the reality may still be a long time coming. Gabriel D. Vine, is this the beginning of the bank dominoes falling, with Goldman Sachs already rumored to be developing their own platform?
I'm going to say no. This is merely a way to quickly sell your Bitcoin. Starbucks is not actually accepting Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, which they will then exchange along further in order to meet their costs, right? They're not going to be paying their staff or bean growers in the tropics of our planet, or their truck drivers or their managers. They're not going to be paying the electricity company for the lights in their offices and in their branches. So this is just another BitPay as far as I'm concerned. It's a point of sale thing. And I really don't blame them for that. Bitcoin is too volatile to be used as anything that you would want to store for weeks or months, which is what's kind of required for a medium of exchange, in my opinion. I mean, you can use it as a medium of exchange and just exchange back and forth on both ends or one end, and that's cool and it totally works and it's amazing. But just the exchange volatility against these giant markets like the USD and the euro, pound, whatever, is still really up and down. That's why we don't use, that's not why, but we wouldn't use stocks in that way even if we could. We can't. But regardless, I think it's going to be a huge step when big retailers in droves begin accepting Bitcoin and not bothering to cash it out because it's too expensive, too inconvenient, and they can just pay their suppliers with it. And I do believe that is still at least 2 years out. I wouldn't be surprised if things really start to landslide in a couple of years, but and then like maybe 3, 4, and 5 years in order to really start making serious inroads into retail. So I don't think this is a very big deal. It's very funny because Starbucks is a classic case of like one of the biggest retailers in the world. So it's a classic case for Bitcoin, and it's often brought up as like Amazon is the classic online use case for Bitcoin, and Starbucks is the classic brick and mortar use case. So in that sense, it's funny, but I don't think it's actually meaningful until these. And what it's going to be is Starbucks will roll out their own app for their that's meets all of exactly their needs. They'll roll it out on iPads for their entire worldwide stores, all their stores, and they're going to have a Lightning app. But until that happens, this stuff will make it easier, and I'm sure that more of this stuff will roll out. But I wonder how much better they're going to do than BitPay, which was obviously 5 years early. Now that things are starting up a bit more, they maybe could survive, but unless they have a 5 or 10 year out view for the outcome of their business, I don't think any of these companies are going to do well. There's not going to be enough traffic to give them the fees that they'll need, and it'll be a waste of time, just like it's been for the last 5 years, because it's too early. There's way more important network effects. A lot of the other stuff that we're going to talk about today is more important than this. So I think it's just kind of like a cosmetic experiment that's still probably too early, just like BitPay.
Oh, I disagree with Gabriel a little bit, saying that Backed won't survive. We aren't exactly entirely sure what Backed's purpose is. To me, it looks very claimed that they're trying to get their hands on your Bitcoin. They want you to give them the Bitcoin, which Starbucks would then, as Gabriel said, accept dollars. Likely through the existing Starbucks app, just add a buy with Bitcoin button, only take 50 to $100. You don't have to worry as much on the fees, and convert it into gift card credit. You pay at the counter with gift card credit like normal. They have an existing system for that. No retraining. Very easy for Starbucks. But I do agree with Gabriel. It is another bit pay. The supply chain can't pay. Starbucks cannot buy beans. Overstock.com cannot buy trinkets with Bitcoin. They need to trade it for dollars to keep their businesses going. Still, it's an encouraging sign that the banks are after your Bitcoin and that they've created another custodian to do it, with Goldman Sachs looking to create a similar and perhaps a mirror copy of a custodian. Just ask everyone to give us a thumbs up and a share. We have about 50 live viewers right now. If you all gave us a thumbs up, YouTube would share this video with more people and more people could enjoy the show. Josh Kigala, your thoughts on Starbucks and Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, people like CoinKite were really ahead of the game in this, and BitPay as well. But CoinKite had a really great point of sales terminal way back in the day. Unfortunately, way too early. I don't think it's anything new. And in fact, I really think it's a great marketing. It's a great headline. It's a great marketing tool. But at the end of the day, if we cannot make Bitcoin work in Venezuela, where your Bitcoin is going, even in this bear market, is doubling in value every week, then we can't make Bitcoin work anywhere as a currency. So
it's not really doubling in value; it's doubling in price against.
Okay, yeah, great point. So, but really, there's the use case. Whether I buy my coffee with Bitcoin or not in a Western world that's doing well at the moment is really beside the point. I think the real point is helping people escape the banking system that needs to and pay for things and hold their value in a collapsing currency, and for people to be able to purchase crypto now for maybe a collapse in the future or to hedge that. But yeah, I mean, Starbucks, great on, it's good. Microsoft, great. These big names are also very good. But, I'm actually more excited when I hear that a programmer is accepting crypto for his services, because really that's where the fun lies, because the programmer isn't going to convert straight to fiat. Maybe they'll convert some of it when they need the fiat, but at that moment, they take the crypto and they hold it. And we're paying more and more perpetual travelers, more programmers, and these are the real use cases, I think. These big, huge conglomerates, I don't know, whatever.
Moving on to the exit question, the question that everyone wants the answer to. When will Starbucks accept Bitcoin for coffee? 6 weeks, 6 months, or never? Gabriel D. Vine.
I'm going to say Starbucks will be a little. They'll be able to roll it out, as Mustafa pointed out on the chat, in their own app. They won't even need the iPads, so it'll be super simple. So they could do it very easily technically. I don't think they'll bother for, let's say, but I'm going to say 3 years, 2021, late 2021.
3 years. Josh, go ahead.
I'm gonna say 8 months. I'm gonna say, well, I'll say the next bull market.
The answer is sooner than you think. Starbucks is right there with their gift cards and their app. They could accept Bitcoin, change it into dollars using the backed exchange, and then put the dollars into your gift card account. If that counts, very soon. If you want the Lightning Network implementation that Gabriel was talking about, at least 2 years. Moving on to issue 2. Issue 2, the SEC and the ETF. The SEC pushed back on their decision on the Solid X Van Eck ETF proposal this week, delaying until September 30th. with the option still remaining to punt again until February. The market reacted violently to this news, with the price of Bitcoin falling from recent highs of $8,500 all the way to lows of $6,300 as short-term traders exited the market. The SEC is currently deciding on as many as 10 Bitcoin ETFs, with deadlines scattered through September and beyond. The real question is, Joshua Scagala, will we see a Bitcoin ETF before 2019?
Yeah, I mean the ETFs are really interesting, and I at the same time I just find them also uninteresting. So, I mean, they're interesting in the fact that anybody that has stocks and shares can jump into crypto. Most of it will be settled in cash. So again, there's no real Bitcoin behind it. It'll just, I feel, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a threat. If there's a threat of settling in Bitcoin, just like there is with the gold or oil futures. I mean, like futures, especially, nobody settles in oil, but the threat's there somehow, so it sort of ties that. But I mean, ETFs are generally meant to have the full backing of the crypto. We'll see if that's the case. I'm really interested in their transparency protocol, what sort of transparency they have behind that, because, it's really important. I think I give a lot of talks around the world about transparency in exchanges, especially because of the whole Mt. Gox and the rest of them that have collapsed along the way. And now that we're seeing enterprise step into the picture, I'd really like to see some beautiful rollouts of the transparency that blockchain really allow everyone to have.
I wasn't very impressed by the one SEC chairwoman who said that the exact same things that they rejected the Winklevi ETF for would be solved by approving an ETF. She really saw the cat and mouse, kind of the chicken and the egg situation that we're in, and understood that by applying regulations and allowing people to invest their money, the wild west nature of Bitcoin may slightly go away. But we'll still have to see on their decision. Gabriel D. Vine, your thoughts about the SEC and the ETF?
ETFs are only 25 years old. They've only existed a short time. And I would go out on a limb. Now, I'm not a financial expert, definitely not. It's not my background. But I would go out on a limb and say that ETFs were created in order to allow digital trading of certain assets, physical assets, which would normally require very expensive transportation. It allows a vehicle that can be traded easily on digital exchanges, which is what the NASDAQ is, and every single other stock market in the world for the last 20 years, or well, maybe not, the third world until the last 5 or 10 years. So Propergal says, I found a drink that makes hair grow. It's called tequila. Anyways, ETFs aren't that old. They were created to facilitate digital trade. Now, what else was created recently in the last 10 years that facilitates digital trade? Yes, that's right. It's a little invention called peer-to-peer cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a worldwide internet protocol that allows value storage and transfer. So it's to the ETFs are a bridge to the world that Bitcoin brings us. So they don't have a long future. Essentially, ETFs are manual tokenization, and they're a lot more controlled by regulation. What that means is that they can also be controlled by powerful individuals, centralized institutions, all sorts of shenanigans like fractional reserve, even though they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be full reserve, but there's no way to prove that cryptographically with ETFs. You have to trust. They're all based on trust. All these trust-based systems are going to go away. None of them will survive, in my opinion, longer than 10 years.
I mean, they could show the cold wallet addresses.
Of the Bitcoin, yes. I'm just saying the traditional ETFs, which are trading gold or oil, you have to trust that there are guards standing in front of a bunker with things being stored there that are equal in value to the tokens for which people are trading digital dollars back and forth, which most certainly are fractional reserve fraudulent debt tokens. So what we have here is this sort of bridge where Bitcoin is actually meant to bring a new paradigm and obviate these ridiculous old structures, but it just takes a lot of time. There's, for creating, tokens for physical things, it still would require trust. Now, we have a money now that they want to trade using this janky old system. We have a real sound digital money, the first real digital asset. And it's very ironic to see that happening. And I think what's going to happen, this is my prediction, huge amounts of fiat will flow into the Bitcoin ETFs over the coming years. But several things will happen. Number one, the Bitcoin ecosystem will grow leaps and bounds faster than the traditional system, which actually will begin to give ground directly to Bitcoin. So the ratio of funds in these derivatives will get smaller and smaller and smaller compared to the market cap of Bitcoin. In other words, the value of Bitcoin according to all the people holding it. And in addition to that, you're going to have hacks and thefts among the ETFs. And I predict no Bitcoin ETF, because Bitcoin is so much easier to steal and move away and keep totally anonymous, and so much more difficult to secure on a institutional basis. It's my contention that no ETF will survive longer than 4 years before being depleted of its reserves through crime. And that is going to basically bankrupt anybody who tried to leverage Bitcoin's growth without actually buying any, and they will be wrecked like so many other people who will be the next Mt. Gox. But instead of causing a collapse in Bitcoin's price, they'll cause the collapse in fiat's price, because everyone will be running to Bitcoin because that's the only thing you can actually trust. So this is all just temporary BS. I do think that they conceivably can temporarily greatly increase the flow of fiat into Bitcoin, but over the long term, I don't actually believe that they'll make much of a difference at all. They're just kind of going to speed things up a bit.
A bold prediction from Gabriel Devine that all of the ETFs will be bankrupt within 4 years because of theft from the inside. Which is
4 years from launch. 4 years from launch.
4 years from launch. 4 years from launch. Fair enough. And it's a good point. I thought for sure when you started to talk about Bitcoin and the gold ETFs, the reason the ETFs were created, I thought you were going to say so they could sell more gold tickets than they had gold bars, and they could do the same old scam over again. And that's practically what you went right to next when you talk about the Bitcoin ETF and if they're actually going to hold the Bitcoin they're selling. Now, certainly there's a big threat there. If they sell more Bitcoin than they have to go buy it on the open market, they might have to pay a higher price than that they sold it for. The same way, if they have Bitcoin, people sell it, and they have less, they could be in trouble holding too much of something that's worth too much. The expression that we're looking for, a hat on a hat. It's a hat on a hat. It's my favorite expression. Moving on to the exit question. Also, it was in the Mike Tyson cartoon show. You got to check that out.
That is
Mike
great.
Tyson Adventures.
Hat on a hat. Is that where it came from?
That's a hat on a hat. So, exit question. How many Bitcoin ETFs will the SEC approve in 2019? Joshua Skagala.
That's a really hard question. I think it'll, in typical SEC fashion, I think you will see a nice duopoly pop out of the picture. But the thing is, actually, it's not just what the SEC approves. As soon as the SEC approves one, and we saw this with future markets, it'll send a ripple around the world, and we'll see ETFs pop up all over the place. I actually don't. The price is going to go absolutely bonkers because there just isn't enough. I mean, there's 21 million Bitcoin. It's hardly anything. And for all these institutionals to want a piece, they'll all say, well, maybe we should have 1% of our portfolio. It's going to be insane. But yeah, that ripple effect, I think we'll see, especially in the mainstays, Germany, Hong Kong, Singapore, Canada as well, ripple out. Yep.
Josh sounds like he's predicting many, but has given us no number. Gabriel D. Vine, give us a number.
2. I think that 1 will be approved later this year, and then we'll get 2 more next year from the SEC. That's my random prediction. And I just like to correct Josh on his statement that there are 21 million Bitcoin. Actually, there are only 17 million. The site didn't come up fast enough. It's 17,200,000, just over. 17.25 million.
And the answer is more than 1. The SEC will approve 1 or more Bitcoin ETFs in 2019. Everybody's correct. It was an easy question. Did you know the World Crypto Network has its own audio podcast where you can listen to audio-only versions of your favorite shows? Check it out on iTunes today and subscribe to the World Crypto Network podcast. Moving on to issue 3, Existential Crisis. A new paper by Dr. John Truby, director at the Center for Law and Development at Qatar University, claims that Bitcoin was designed with no considerations made for its environmental impact, and that the demand placed by Bitcoin mining upon our electrical grid will use more and more power until there is nothing left, and all of the power on Earth is used to mine Bitcoin. He claims governmental intervention may be the only thing that could turn the tide and stop Bitcoin from destroying the entire world. Gabriel D. Vine, is he right?
I find that this professor is doing a classic projection. Well, not a projection, more of a misdirection, or basically his gut tells him Bitcoin is a threat. And so he looked for any excuse he could find in order to write a paper that claims that it's a big threat to everyone, when it's, the end of the article has this little sentence. Besides government intervention, Truby also notes in his paper that if allowed a free hand, the market possesses the capacity to rectify the situation by letting the electricity prices shape the behavior of the Bitcoin mining sector. Duh. But really what we have here is a classic case of sublimation, right? Professor Truby is rightly worried that Bitcoin is a direct threat to his livelihood. And just like it is a threat to nearly all academics' livelihood, it does directly threaten the world that he depends on. It directly threatens his job and the institution, Qatar University, that hires him. So I think what we're going to see is a major collapse in academia as governments lose the ability to print money out of thin air. And I predict that Professor Truby will be out of a job at least 100 times faster than Bitcoin will. Actually, no, let's say 10 times faster, because we might not really need Bitcoin much in 50 years. But yeah, he'll be out of a job within, let's say, 7.
Prediction after prediction from Gabriel today. And of course, Professor Truby takes no attempt to measure how much energy is being used by the current system of central banks, armored cars, bankers, printing presses, all the rest of this nonsense. Josh Gagala, your thoughts on the existential crisis of Bitcoin?
No, I just find it so laughable. I could literally, it's these ridiculous predictions. I mean, first of all, I think it's a good thing for electricity. All I've seen from Bitcoin miners is to try to find cheaper and cheaper and more renewable energy. So the cheapest renewable energies isn't something that you dig out of the ground and then burn. The cheapest is falling water that's down, that's pretty much the cheapest thing you can get because it's already falling. And they've built these dams, but no, actually the cheapest is geothermal power. And a lot of these mining rigs are setting up near these sort of setups. So it's ridiculous to think oh, well, we're going to have some existential crisis where we just use all the power in the world. It's ludicrous. And it's really, I think Bitcoin is one of these things that really drives technology forward on how to make better technology, how to make better electricity. And this is it's a typical thing that comes up all the time, especially from the Greens and the left, that we have to use less power. We have to use less power. You have things like Earth Day, Earth Hour, or whatever. Oh, we must all turn off our lights for an hour. And it's ludicrous. We shouldn't use less power. We should be using more power. We should just be finding better ways of making better power. We're surrounded by energy. Our entire universe is just pure energy, and it's ludicrous for us to go, oh, we're going to use all the energy with Bitcoin mining. Come on, get over it, mate.
Josh is absolutely right. We used to need to use more power. It's like that old show, Home Improvement. And maybe even Bitcoin gives us the ability to do that. If you think about hydrothermal power, as Josh was saying, you have to put the batteries near the dam, right? You have to build more batteries, and it costs money to make batteries. You could instead just mine Bitcoin near the dam, use Bitcoin as sort of a battery for that energy, and there it is. You can then trade it on the market. Now it's much more feasible to build hydrothermal dams than it used to be.
That's right. And Bitcoin is causing all of this wonderful effect on the market without any intervention, without, basically often in spite of and against government regulations. And, despite all the attempts to try to control it, it's still helping the world. And, it's just really typical statist bullshit here in this article. It says they want to regulate the hardware, but like the market. Wow. Hey, Max, you might want to mute yourself. The market is already providing the most intensive efficiency, brutally efficient, standards on these miners, and he wants to like regulate the stuff that the market's already doing, which is just going to cause second and third order effects that are anti what he's talking. Poor kid, 15-year-old kid in Gambia, somebody bribed his government to take Professor Truby's advice, and they outlaw some relatively inefficient miner, but he's got ultra cheap power, and he didn't pay anything for this miner. I mean, it's just, or like somebody's got extra stock and somebody can make it profitable. To say that they're just going to make it illegal, it's just totally retarded and typical academic thinking, where they don't understand probabilities, they don't understand higher order effects. And so what you have is this situation where academics and politicians never get weeded out because there's no skin in the game, and they have no performance metrics which allow the best ideas to come forward. So this whole bezel, which is a term, back formation from embezzlement, which is basically all of the fake money that gets created, all this hot air that gets blown into the economy and blows up these huge bubbles in order to draw off wealth from real things and real work. All this bezel is going to collapse, and idiots like Truby are going to collapse with him.
I mean, just the notion that the government has to step in. He obviously doesn't understand Bitcoin. I mean, Satoshi created decentralized money because it couldn't be shut down. It couldn't be controlled. I mean, so what? Because the mining is causing, some sort of environmental disaster in his mind, he thinks the government can step in and change. It can't. I mean, it can't. It really shows a lack of understanding.
I just like the simple multiplication. They take how much is currently being used to mine Bitcoin, and they multiply times 100, and they say, well, it's going to be like that in 100 years. Oh my. And again, you're just thinking about it too simply. Better chips will come along, better ways of mining Bitcoin. Things will even out. But I just loved his existential all or nothing. The entire planet's going to be destroyed. Bitcoin mining is some kind of infinite jest that we can't get out of, that we would just stick ourselves into and destroy the whole world. I'm not arguing against it. I've seen Idiocracy. I think these things are possible. Those Carl's Jr.'s tubes. I mean, these kind of things. Like, we could go there. We're not very smart as a species. We've done dumber things. So let's move on to the exit question, which I assure you is very good. It says, Exit question. When all of Earth's power is used up mining Bitcoin, humanity will learn its lesson and shut the machines off, destroy itself fighting over the Bitcoin, or figure out solar Bitcoin mining and continue the conflict for energy and Bitcoin in space. Space. Gabriel Devine.
I disagree with the premise and refuse to answer the question. That will never, ever happen.
Joshua Skigala.
Absolutely the third one. We will just find new, better ways of mining in space.
Mining and Max, are you with us?
I am, and yes, mining in space would be nice, but just imagine something like Tesla scalar energy devices, where you can just start mining because you plug your miner into the dirt. That would be fantastic.
The correct answer is indeed mining in space. As Peter Todd predicted in his presentation last year at Paris, space miners, solar mining Bitcoin. What kind of space pirates? There will be Bitcoin mining in space. Humanity will just keep going. Moving on to issue 4, Bitcoin Venezuela. Excuse me. The Venezuelan inflation crisis continues to spiral out of control, with the price of a cup of coffee jumping from a mere 2,300 bolivars this time last year to more than 2 million bolivars today. I did mute myself. Meanwhile, Bitcoin trading volumes have doubled, and the price of the fledgling cryptocurrency seems to be multiplying by a factor of 2 every 3 weeks. Gabriel Devine, is this a perfect storm? Are the people of Venezuela adopting Bitcoin?
I've been blabbing a lot. I'm going to cede my place. I'll talk later. Why doesn't the newcomer answer this one? Max, you ready for it?
Well, yes, the Venezuelans, they do like Bitcoin, but you know what they do like more? Their freedom and their property. So they do not use Bitcoin as a speculative investment. No, they use Bitcoin to defend themselves against the financial warfare that is going on in Venezuela for the last couple of years. So yes, absolutely, Bitcoin adoption is growing in Venezuela. It's sad that we need it. It's sad that their economy is at a state of complete collapse, and this brings, of course, immense hardship, and this is nothing to be happy about. But on the other hand,
Max seems to be having internet troubles. Let's go to Joshua Skigala.
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely, Bitcoin is taking off in Venezuela, even though, it is a big country. There's a lot of people. So when we say taking off, it is still only a very, very, very small, and what's happening there isn't something to laugh about. It is actually our CMO here at Voltoro is from Venezuela originally, and he sends money home to his mum for his mum's cleaner, and she gets paid 50 cents for the month of work, and she works every 2 weeks for 2 hours or so, 4 hours or something like that. I mean, the minimum wage has gone down. People have dropped weight by an average of 14 kilos on average, and it's really quite sick. They're this sort of control freak nature of politics, where they just refuse to let go of an absolutely atrocious policy, a financial policy. I think, like I said before, if we can't make crypto work in Venezuela, then it's not going to work for a very long time. And it is working. The people that are adopting it, and this is unfortunately only the very technocratic class, which is unfortunate because the user experience just isn't there yet, sadly. I mean, there are, but there is a lot of work being put in by certain blockchains. I know I don't want to, go around shilling things, but I know that Dash has put a lot of their masternodes of sending a lot of money into Venezuela to market their blockchain, and people in Bitcoin, old school Bitcoiners, are also very, very heavy in Central America. there's a lot of work being put into getting people to use this stuff and teaching people how to use this stuff. So I think it's only a matter of time where slowly one person will tell the next. I mean, credit cards, ATMs were extremely weird when they first came out. These new machines, these robots stuck in a wall, people would always still go inside. And it took maybe 10, 12 years for no one to go inside anymore. And so I think by the time people feel confident enough with a QR code, with that big string of numbers, I think then it's sort of it's a snowball effect. It really is, as one person teaches the next, and to not be afraid of this new technology. But yeah, Bitcoin is definitely taken. I mean, if you can, in a bear market, in a goddamn bear market, your Bitcoin is still doubling in price every 18 days. I mean, that's what other excuse do you have?
It might not be so much that the Bitcoin's doubling in price. It might be that their currency is losing half its value. Gabriel Devine, your thoughts on Venezuela and Bitcoin?
Yeah, that is definitely the case. Bitcoin there's definitely a premium down there, but it's not like, that much great. I think it's relatively consistent over the dollar price. But of course, in pesos, it's going to be going up very fast. It's a terrible shame. You try to look for silver linings in these terrible, awful situations where so many are suffering and dying because of the evils of corrupt governments. And so I try to look at the bright side as much as I can. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of human suffering going on down there, and the extremity of the crime committed against the people of Venezuela. But luckily there are hopefully some positive higher order effects, like the awareness of the untenability of socialism as like a poster child, and the just as a poster child for monetary fraud, and to show the dangers. And it's like, well, as long as there's countries and millions upon millions of people that have to suffer this type of privation strictly due to the crimes of the government, the country has not had, severe natural disasters or anything like that. There's no whatever famine or anything like that. It's purely created by human action and corruption. So it's a great poster child for us to point to and say, listen, you think this can't happen in your country, but just look at, it's Venezuela today, Argentina yesterday, Turkey last night and this morning. So, it's luckily there is, something to be said for the fact that, well, this can maybe motivate some people. Obviously, I think it would be way better if we all had, just an equally weak fiat instead of, moderately, less weak fiat like the dollar and the euro, and more weak fiat like this useless paper. So yeah, it's a really sad situation. I get really sad for these poor people that are suffering under these regimes, and I'm so glad that Bitcoin exists so that we can help bring up the disadvantaged by their bootstraps.
Very good. Moving on to the exit question. After Venezuela, which country will be the next to catch Bitcoin fever? Joshua Skagala.
I think there'll be African countries that will catch. We're seeing here some of the statistics coming out of Voltoro. We're seeing definitely Nigeria, funnily enough, making moves. Myanmar making moves, which is also strange. So I think it's some of these countries where you wouldn't really expect. Yeah.
Max Hillebrand.
Well, I do think it's going to be those countries that are going to collapse.
Seem to be having audio difficulties with Max. We're going to go on to Gabriel Devine.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, Turkey's having a huge problem right now, but they're part of the EU, which is just hilarious. There's just so much chaos going on,
They're
you
not
know, in the
really part of
EU.
the EU,
Oh, they're not?
Turkey. No.
Okay, sorry. I stand corrected. Nevertheless, the EU has a lot of skin in the game with Turkey because they
I
want them
think
to
they're
keep.
in NATO. I think it's a NATO EU
Right.
thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They're
Yeah,
in NATO.
yeah. I
And,
mean,
but
economic zone, definitely.
right. Yeah. So they Europe has an interest in keeping Turkey afloat in order to to stem the tide of refugees from the Middle East and for various other reasons. And it's really funny. I mean, Trump is definitely toying with them. I saw him tweeting out that they were gonna, like, when Turkey, the lira is on the ropes, and Trump tweets out that they're gonna double some tariffs for Turkish imports. And it's pretty natural consequence of a huge seizure of power like this. So I'm going to randomly say Turkey. I'm sure Josh's comments are way more informed than mine, but I'm kind of just throwing it out there.
I'm
Well,
sticking with the chat, and the chat says Turkey, so it must be Turkey. Moving on to predictions or story of the week. Joshua Skagala, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that one.
All right, we're going down to Gabriel Devine. Are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Yeah, my story of the week has to do with social media, right? So we had a very busy week with many happenings. The popular what you might call alt-right commentator Alex Jones was summarily kicked off of numerous social platforms at exactly the same time, a clear sign of collusion between these freely operating private corporations, which they totally have the right to call each other up and decide to try out a ban and see how it float it with the public and see how well people react to it. I think it was a great test case for them to gather some data on the general tenor of the zeitgeist right now and see how people react. And it's a great test case for all of us to be aware that these are centralized platforms and to motivate us to work on our decentralized alternatives. And a lot of crypto Twitter is trying out Mastodon. I've used Mastodon before. I think it's fine. It's a little bit more confusing as far as signing up and requires an email, as Nick Szabo was complaining about on Twitter. Pretty tough call to try to disrupt the network effect of the top microblogging platform, Twitter. So I'm just keeping my eye on it. I'd like to try Mastodon. I tried to do it and ran into an issue with my email address that I used and wasn't able to sign up. Similar thing happened to me with Keybase. In case Keybase users are out there wondering why I was on there before and not back, I couldn't recover my account. So it's kind of interesting to see things like that happen where I wasn't that careful. I'm not as careful with that stuff as I am with Bitcoin, and to see when the ownership of private keys and stuff. I had private keys, but apparently they have some sort of aging process on Keybase or something. I don't know what is going on with that. So it's like halfway between centralized and decentralized. So I never know whether I can email the company to get my account back or not. It's just very confusing. So it'll be interesting to see. That's my story.
Yes, Gabriel, it was either collusion or one of them banned them and the rest of them all followed suit like a herd of lemmings because they didn't want to look bad for PR reasons, which seems simpler to me. But we talked about this all week on Bitcoin Talk Show. I've been there. People have called in. They've disagreed with me. I've let them talk. We've gone back and forth on this. So we've discussed it a lot, but we can discuss it more next week if you want. Max Hillebrand, I put a second earbud in. Can I hear you now? Are you a left-right channel issue?
Well, let's see. Third microphone
I still
is
got
hopefully
nothing.
the
I mean, the
charm.
audience is all like, "Oh yeah, we can hear them," and I don't know. They're,
Really?
they're probably trolling us. So good on you, audience. Thanks, Max, for trying to join us. Everyone can check out Max's recent interviews. He did one this week with Jimmy Song. It's right here on the World Crypto Network. Also, let's just go to Josh Gagala for a prediction or a story of the week. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow suit with the Alex Jones story. I think it's kind of interesting. And I know you've talked about it already, but just my 2 cents. Really, this is again another case for decentralization. So grand and so in your face. Although, you know, it also, we see things like Reddit, which are centralized, and they don't ban stuff that often from a company point of view. Maybe they do, but we see a lot of censorship from people downvoting other people when they don't agree. So whether that's censorship or not, I don't know. I mean, I guess censorship is more on a government level, refusing people or torturing people when they say something. But yeah, in terms of a company, I also think, well, if my, you know, Twitter or whoever it was, YouTube, want to ban it, they're a private company. They can do what they want. But yeah, this is a time where we go, well, you know what, I'm going to stop using that. And you know, this is a big problem with network effects, especially things like YouTube and social networks. It's really, really hard to dethrone them. When they do something you don't like, it's all your friends are there, all your best shows are there. You're still going to keep going back. So let's hope that we can get a decentralized version working, but I think it'll be a long time coming.
It's also worth noting people knew about the problem with these platforms for a long time. People tried to speak out. They tried to warn you. Certainly someone like Alex Jones should have a backup website. He should pull a switch and be broadcasting on his own thing. He has lots of money. There should be no problem with that.
I
And
think he is. He's got his app and stuff. He's doing it.
well, he's got his app because Apple didn't ban him. Just FYI, Apple and Twitter, for whatever reason, they say he hasn't violated their rules yet, or he hasn't, and they aren't banning him. So, still not so sure on that top-down conspiracy thing, because why not ban him in all of them? I mean, presumably they have the same dirt on Apple executives they have on Twitter executives, but they didn't fall in line. But just want to thank everyone for giving us a thumbs up and a share. We had a big day today on the World Crypto Network. We had 4 live shows today, kind of by accident, a lot of them lined up against each other. So you probably have to go back and watch the other show while you're watching this show. But at least you have a lot more content to watch. And if you're listening later on the podcast, it's just like having 4 podcasts together. So it's very good. And let's move on. And as always, if you want to support the World Crypto Network, you can donate now to the Bitcoin address on your screen, or we take all these crazy altcoins that are accepted by Trezor. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Bitcoin Talk Show at 9 a.m. West Coast time. Until next time, bye-bye.